situation has broke out into student protests all around the country. The hubs of this are higher education, specifically elite higher education. This video I saw, and watch this.
Excuse me, do you see what you guys are doing to us?
We are going to
see how hostile this is? And you're asking me not to record?
Walk and take a step forward.
Yeah, I absolutely feel threatened right now.
So that we can
Start
to push them out of the camp. One step forward. Another step forward. We ask that you please respect our privacy and our community guidelines, which you have so far disrespected, and leave our camp. One step forward.
You guys don't have to do this, you know? You're all here because we're here.
Repeat after me. I'm bored. We would like you to leave.
Columbia University, an elite Ivy League university in America, and then these have spread across the country. Horrific anti-Jewish sentiment, regardless of how you feel about the war in the Middle East. That's a whole nother thing. But like, I am Hamas. Get off the streets, Jew, crazy stuff, all on video, not speculatory. What I really thought was fascinating about this clip, so I believe that the human being is tribal by nature, and we want to graft into a purpose. We want religion, true religion, the religion that Jesus talked about. And, you know, it's not uncommon for Christians to speak in unison. It's not uncommon for Christians to chant faith anthems. That's not the problem. The cult without creed, the cult without principle or core is so dangerous, because like this goes on, and this leader starts expressing like individual emotions, and then the crowd hundreds of yards away just shouts at these emotions. And I've studied you know, the spirit of religion that takes on many forms: Marxism, leftism, all these different things. It has like its priests, it has its excommunication, it has its prophets cut off from the group. What it doesn't have is timeless universal principles that you individually internalize. What's happening with these kids is when they go up to these kids and talk to them, they know nothing.
I honestly don't know. Do you know what NY is doing? About what? About Israel. Why are we protesting here?
Palestine will be free.
I wish I was more educated. I'm not either.
Oh.
I came from Columbia. I was there up at Columbia, and we came down.
I just want to be on the record. I'm for Americans protesting. I'm for speech. The fact that they're protesting is not my issue. In fact, the government's been trying to shut down citizens protesting. That's not an issue for me. It was this religiosity that gained my curiosity. With all the things in this nation that are affecting these kids, they can't pay the rent. Food prices are outrageous. They're not even able to on-ramp as a citizen. This gets them in the streets. Okay, the only explanation for this is groupthink, and somehow these professors, an American kid from like Timbuktu, America, is not sitting around thinking, I am Hamas, without some prophet or priest of the Ivy League pumping religion into their head, right? But to galvanize this kind of response says a couple positive things to me. Number one, why are the believers not going after these kids who long for religion, who long for purpose, who long for substantive community? Because this says so much to a believer about like where the young people are, how drifting and aimless and anchorless these kids are, to the point where they're like, step forward one step, step forward one step. I mean, that is as straight out of the cult handbook as you get. There's a reasonable case to discuss the Middle East policy. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just pure hatred of the Jews, hatred of America, hatred of Israel. That was the one through line in all my college professors, and they would proselytize that to all the students. You jump ahead. I've been out of college 2 decades. How bad is that now? Well, it's this bad. It's this bad. Our community guideline, beep, bop, boop, bop, boop. It's so frightening. It's like Orwellian 50 yards ago. We blew past Brave New World. What do you think, Sean?
I think you're correct. I think a lot of people probably in that crowd don't have a real understanding of what's going on in Israel and Palestine. Whoever's fostering this type of animosity, anger, even promoting maybe violence and where things are heading to, they want us to see each other as groups.
Right.
And when you see people as groups, you dehumanize them, and then it's very easy for you to ostracize them to the point to even minimalizing them in society and culture, and then actually now taking that and weaponizing that to be able to do away with them.
Right.
So I think in this group here, just to make, and I'm not saying I'm for them or against them, but I feel like I need to do this first and then take a step back.
I'm not for them or against them either. Yeah.
I'm sure if we walk through that group, there will be some people in that group that would have legitimate reasons why they feel
I totally agree with
about
that.
what Israel's doing in Gaza. And we would have a conversation with them. If they would have a level-headed conversation with us, we'd be
well,
like,
they wouldn't. They would push you out.
Maybe. But maybe there's one or two people in that group that would actually have a level-headed conversation with us, and we would say, oh, you know what? What you're saying there is justified. Maybe there was a too heavy-handed approach in this one area or that one area. But that's when you're getting a group there that's now gathering together and they're angry and they're looking for the proverbial blood. There's no more nuance to the conversation anymore. It's Israel, death to Israel, Israel's bad, America's bad, destroy America. And when you have these broad stroke now kind of judgments or desires of action, that's where it gets very dangerous. And we're in a society right now, and I think we've seen this in history, where we've rejected God on a fundamental level. Mm-hmm. We've rejected the message of the Bible, which says all men are sinners and they've fallen short of the glory of God. The Bible says like man's heart is wicked in all its ways, who can know it? Mm-hmm. What the world says to you, what society says to you is actually you are good. You are innately good. And so when you've been raised up in a society like that and now you feel like you're innately good, it's very easy for you now to grab a hold of a judgment that you've made and see that as the highest moral good that you're able to now accomplish or put your stamp down in regards to what you think is a moral high ground. And I think that's very dangerous when you see that take root in a society. If you look through history, if you look at, communism in Russia, communism in China, communism in with Pol Pot's, these movements in regards to would be very atheistic. But then you saw these moralistic claims that turned brutal. And
I think we're flirting with this.
Because when you reject that at the core of yourself that you are fallen, that you do make mistakes, that you are broken, when you rejected that truth claim, it's very easy for you to see yourself as what the Bible would call your own God. And now whatever you have deemed moral, you see it as the highest moral good that is accomplished.
Right.
So I think we have, and this is, it's a society this is true, but it's brought to a boiling pot, like the pot is boiling over in our college campuses.
Right.
Because if you see where it is affecting society, it starts off on the college campus where you're hearing this happen, where you're seeing kids that's being taught a certain moral framework of thinking.
Right.
So they see if they do not take this stance, they are not morally good.
Right.
That's a very dangerous. So when you're talking about religion, I would say that is what the religious aspect of it is. Mm-hmm. Is that they're standing up saying that this is a moral right. But they have not seen that moral right as something religious in the framework of Bible or God or religion in the classic sense of things. They're seeing it as an internal, I am God, moral right. So that's why when you see that, it's very hard for you to have a conversation with these people because they immediately label you as evil. Right.
As the video goes on, they start talking about how they will not discuss, they will not talk, they're bored. But it's not, it's the person goes, I am, and then the rest of them go, I am bored with this. I saw this during COVID, actually. It's like, I'm not so much for a thing, but I'm more concerned about being attacked for not being for a thing. If you're in any of our Ivy League colleges and you break orthodoxy, you really have issues.
Yeah.
So that's the part of it I'm interested in. I just want to be very clear. The Israel-Palestine thing, I think what they have Hamas signs and Hamas flags. And I think they would, if you talk to them, anybody who knew anything would just say, from the river to the sea, there's a lot of chanting like that. There's Israel has no right. All that stuff is thick with deep conversation. But just if you're willing to go there with me, the idea that our American students are doing this, especially in the malaise of all the other things that actually could garner the protest, I think there's a fascinating, if you want to see it, they are showing you their cards that they want to be a part of something. They want religious belonging. You know, I really like what you said there. You know, I studied, I really became fascinated with the French Revolution for a while. And as a young man, I took to American history, and I really love American history. But if you take the two revolutions, you take the American Revolution, take the French Revolution, you have a great juxtaposition there of what is a revolution that has the Spirit of God in it, or the biblical tenets of what we believe in it, although far from perfect, but I'm just saying. And then you have a religion of self. You have a religion of self-worship and secular worship. And when you look at those two, the outcomes, the fruit that those two trees bore were unbelievable. And I think that's among us even today. It's not like religious cults can't spring out of good religion and all that stuff. It's that when you remove creed and an internal self-restraint into our religion teaches us not only are we not God, but we are to die to ourselves, right? That's the opposite. The French Revolution turned on itself in such a fury that they painted the streets red with their own. It just devoured itself like a snake eating its tail.
My point that when you study the French Revolution, their proclamation in the French Revolution was, there is no kings over us, right? The people are now judge and God over whatever they're going to do or not do. They are the law unto themselves. So it was a very purely democratic movement where the people are the might of right. And that's why it boiled down to beheading the monarchs, and then they all of a sudden started beheading anybody who would speak against them.
Just a mob.
How can you speak against somebody who's the ultimate right? Well, you have to stamp that out. You can't allow that because that's wrong and it's evil.
Yeah, right.
Whereas the American Revolution, it had a framework. Because I'm starting to see our society turn to the same direction as the French Revolution in regards to the people being the ultimate arbitrator of what's right and what's wrong.
You even see that in the language. It's chosen very specifically.
But the thing in the American Revolution is it was anchored at the end of the revolution, the American Revolution, in no, God is the divine giver of the ultimate, our rights, the authority of government, all those things find its anchor in God. And that's kind of what brought the American Revolution in a different direction than the French Revolution. The American Revolution, if it would have stayed at the core principles of some people within our government, it could have turned as bloody as the French Revolution.
Absolutely.
But you had a competing mindset there. Some of them were deists, some of them were hard and true Christians. And by that balance that happened, you had now what came out of the American Revolution. I just want to put that out there. What I see going on is, I think there's organizations, spiritual entities, I'll just go that direction, that don't want what we have in this country. They hate that our rights are anchored in God, because God is that understanding of rights is an impedance to them accomplishing what they want to accomplish on the world stage. If you see yourself as the ultimate power, and you see you're the ultimate one that can now decide what is right and wrong, what is good and what is evil, what is true and what is not true for society, then the last thing you want is people to say, well, my authority, my rights come from a creator. That is an impediment to what you want to accomplish. So and that's going back to the college campuses. That's why the college campuses is such a breeding ground for this mindset that turns into a very kind of robotic, getting together as a group, protesting that turns somewhat violent in regards to its outworking now into what we see in culture. I think throughout the recent history, we see Black Lives Matter kind of started that way.
Right.
We see now this political movement starting this way, and DEI and all these things that have come out of the college system, and then they have spilled it over into the college to the youth, and then they have brought it out onto the marketplace of society.
So there's a hopeful aspect to this, because when you have just a blank canvas of a mind, when, like I said, I really think if you were to get together with some of these people, very few of them, something cool is happening, I'm going to go do this thing, I want to be on the right side. A lot of times with young people, the reason Pot had his soldiers were all under the age of 14, and he had them walk the parents out into the killing fields and kill their own parents, is because you can take children who have nothing in their mind and you can paint on that. And the universities are clearly doing that with religious fervor. I would say, though, believers can do that too if we want to. We can take true religion, we can take life-giving true religion found in the Savior, the suffering servant. If we're willing to go after them, these professors are clearly willing to evangelize. Yeah. These professors are clearly willing to spout their religious nonsense despite church and state fiction. Or a misunderstanding of what church and state is. So believers have to snap out of it and pull up a seat at the table. Imagine this same protest, but to return our civilization to righteousness, to return us to things of life instead of death. Yeah. Imagine that. Imagine that. And you know, my point in showing that clip is that is right before us. That harvest field is right before us. Those young kids are desperate for purpose, desperate for true religion, and yet we're not seed bedding that ground. Instead, the world is seed bedding that ground.